What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. We have quite a lot to talk to you about today. We have Humberto and Invest 94L, which is soon to be Imelda, heading towards the Bahamas and the United States based on the latest models. We have a lot that we need to talk to you about today, and we have a very rare scenario that we're going to be discussing too, and a lot of analysis to boot as well. So let's go ahead and dive right into it right now. So starting off, ladies and gentlemen, we have Gabrielle over here out in the Atlantic. We have Humberto and Invest 94L. We're going to mainly focus on Humberto and 94L because of the proximity to land, especially the Bahamas and the United States that these systems pose a threat to. Gabrielle posed a threat to the Azores Islands. Once again, they're under hurricane warnings. It's a 75-mile-per-hour Category 1 hurricane, currently undergoing an extratropical cyclone transition, so there's really not too much to talk about. But if you are in the Azores Islands, heed these warnings very seriously, make final preparations. This is going to be heading towards you later tonight, so stay tuned for that. But now we'll go ahead and get to Tropical Storm Humberto, and then we'll get to 94L, which will actually be the main meat of the video today, because there's been a lot of interesting changes that we need to discuss with you. Starting with Tropical Storm Humberto, it is a 50-mile-per-hour tropical storm. At this current point, the minimum central pressure is 1,004 millibars. It's expected to be a hurricane in a day or so over the central Atlantic. Tropical storm force winds extend outward 105 miles from the center, and its current location is 21.4 degrees north, 56.8 degrees west. So we're definitely going to want to watch this and definitely pay attention to it moving forward. Taking a quick look at the discussion, there are some interesting things we need to talk about, and this is actually going to be in play for what's going on with 94L at this current point. Deep convection has been increasing near and to the east of the center of Humberto during the past several hours, but the storm remains asymmetric due to the effects of wind shear and dry air entrainment. The initial intensity has increased a little to 45 knots, which is near the high end of the latest satellite estimate. So this is actually a little bit of a liberal intensity estimate right here. This system's actually been slower than rather strengthening slower than originally expected, because it's been getting sheared by 94L's outflow, and we'll show you that on satellite in just a few minutes. But that's part of the reason why we're seeing that right here, as well as that slowdown in intensity. The tropical storm is expected to continue to battle shear and dry air associated with a mid to upper level trough for another day or so. However, by the weekend, the models show the upper level wind pattern becoming notably more favorable for strengthening. Based on the current trends and expected conducive conditions, the NHC intensity forecast has been nudged upward and shows Humberto becoming a hurricane in a day or so, then rapidly strengthening into a major hurricane over the weekend. This prediction is roughly in line with the latest HCCA and IVCN consensus models. Humberto is currently embedded in weak steering currents on the south side. The pattern should keep of the Atlantic. The pattern should keep the storm moving slowly to the west-northwest or northwest during the next day or two. After that time, Humberto is expected to be primarily steered for a much stronger high over the western Atlantic, which should cause the storm to speed up. Models have trended south and west this cycle, and the NHC track forecasts have been nudged in those directions. This forecast keeps Humberto over the central subtropical Atlantic over the next several days. They increased the major hurricane strength to 120 miles per hour in 3 days or so. However, given the current trends we are noticing right here, considering the slower movement we are dealing with, the longer that continues to go on and the slower this takes to develop and actually strengthen properly, at least and develop a core on the western side, 94L will have a closer shot to land, and we will show you that in just a second. But here is your cone for you guys right here. This is the cone that we have pulled up. Expected to be a very slow-moving storm for the next couple of days or so, then expected to speed up by Sunday, and then by Tuesday, it's going to remain over and cross into parts of the subtropical Atlantic west of Bermuda. The Fujiwara effect will definitely be something we're going to want to pay attention to, and we will keep you updated on all of that here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. However, this is the main meat of the video for today, and I will be talking to you about why that is. Here's what we have going on for you, ladies and gentlemen, right here this morning. We now have a 90% chance of formation in 7 days. We have a 70-90 shot at this current point in time. What a dramatic change this has become right here, and not just in terms of the development, but in terms of the intensity, in terms of the track as well, because quite a bit has cleared up, and we now have some new trends that we need to talk to you about. So let's go ahead and read this out. A tropical wave is producing a large area of disorganized showers and thunderstorms and gusty winds across portions of the Dominican Republic and Turks and Caicos Islands. An area of low pressure is expected to form along the wave tonight or early Friday when it moves over the southwest near the southeastern Bahamas. This low is expected to become a tropical depression when it's in the vicinity of the central to northwestern Bahamas in a couple of days. Interests in the Dominican Republic, Haiti, the Turks and Caicos Islands, and the Bahamas should monitor the progress of the system, as heavy rains and gusty winds are likely to spread across the region regardless of development. Interests in on the coast of the southeastern United States should also monitor the progress of the system. This is the first time the NHC has made that headline available for us right here, ladies and gentlemen. So this is what we got. 70% chance in 48 hours, 90% in 7 days. So we have quite a bit of strengthening and quite a bit of development left to go, but it's off to a really good start, and it's also shifting further and further and further towards land, and we'll go ahead and pull that up and explain why. Starting off with the satellite imagery, this needs to be emphasized very, very quickly right here. We're going to go ahead and show you the central Atlantic time frame with this right here, just to kind of give you an understanding as to what's been going on. Let's go ahead and put this back to about 120 frames just to show you what's been going on over the last day or so, and then we can go ahead and talk about what's going on in the future. So basically, what was going on was Humberto was organizing, developing, became a tropical storm yesterday afternoon. I know I got a lot of comments telling me I missed that, but hey, I was working with some stuff. I was kind of recording this ahead of time, so I didn't know that. I do apologize for that, but thankfully this will be corrected. But you started noticing this a little bit later down the line, is you start noticing this outflow boundary that 94L is generating right here, the outer inflow boundary, as I called it last night on Weather Kingdom stream, is basically what we're seeing is it's actually kind of inhibiting some organization and strengthening potential for parts of Humberto right here. The western side of it's absolutely gotten sheared to bits over the last little while. We're looking at this even late last night. This was really starting to chip at the structure of Humberto and really slow its consolidation and slow its intensification by a considerable margin as well, and we're still seeing that outflow really churn in right there and really still chip away at the structure. You're also seeing some mid-level flow starting to chip in at that structure as well. Let's go ahead and show you true color imagery, also just to kind of give you an idea as to what's been going on. But yeah, ultimately, you have a situation where the structure is getting chipped apart by the shear of Invest 94L, and that is a very big concern of mine. And the reason it's a very big concern of mine is the longer it takes for Humberto to intensify, the longer it takes for it to get its act together and organize, the further to the west Invest 94L will go. And also consider the following as well. Humberto is moving very, very slowly at this current point in time. I believe the latest speed on this was 8 miles per hour. Invest 94L is moving at about 15 miles per hour last I checked, maybe a little bit slower than that at this current point. So it's picking up distance and getting more and more distance away from Invest 94L at this current point in time. So I do want to emphasize that very clearly. The reason I'm concerned about that is the Fujiwara effect we were talking about over the last couple of days. There's actually a bigger possibility that may not happen, and instead of that, we could see a U.S. landfall with Invest 94L, which would be Imelda, the eye curse, potentially coming back to haunt us. And that is a very big concern that I've looked at with this right here. And going back to satellite imagery, I want to go ahead and go back to Invest 94L, and I want to emphasize and show something very quickly that we noticed a little bit. A lot of the convection as well as a mid-level circulation formed further to the south, I've noticed. You do have your LLC over here off the Dominican Republic, but the MLC appears, or at least an MLC produced by convection, appears to be just further to the south of that, either just offshore of the southern side or in the Dominican Republic at this current point in time. You're definitely going to want to watch that. and see how that consolidates. And the longer this takes to consolidate too, keep in mind, the worse off the impacts will potentially be, because this will allow it to move further to the west. This could affect more land, and this could potentially move into warmer waters and then really catch a lot of people by surprise, as we've seen with some models recently. So that's another situation and another factor that we're considering as well. So I'm just taking a quick look at this right here. At this current point, just looking at my tropical chat here at Storms United, we're looking at this current point. It's still a tricky forecast, don't get me wrong, but a lot of things have been made a lot easier compared to what we've seen last night, and I'll go ahead and show you that. Here was our track models based on Invest 94L. First of all, 94L, let's take a quick look at the latest intensity. 25 knots at this current point, 30 miles per hour, 1,000 millibar pressure. Location is 20 degrees north, 70.7 degrees west. Here's what the track was 12 hours ago. 12 hours ago, we weren't 100% sure what was going to be happening. A lot of the models had shifted further towards the west and potentially closer towards land in North Carolina, especially in the Bahamas as well, potentially pulling an Isaias type track from what we're seeing. This is what we're seeing now. A considerable shift to the west, ladies and gentlemen. This is going to impact the Turks and Caicos, impact a lot of the Bahamas, especially Grand Bahama, Great Abaco, potentially the island Nassau is on, and potentially bring more and more impacts to Florida. And now it's more likely that a South Carolina or Georgia landfall is possible with this scenario right here. And we can zoom in just to show you that as well, and same with the other one moving forward. But ultimately, this is your scenario we are seeing right here. Before, we were thinking a Fujiwara effect was going to kind of take hold before this system impacted the United States much. Now, given that Humberto is getting more and more sheared than we initially thought, and considering the fact that 94L is putting more and more distance from Humberto on top of that, the Fujiwara effect possibility becomes a lot less likely, in my opinion, based on those trends right there. Another thing that's increasingly likely, too, is rapid intensification with 94L. This is what's forecast with a lot of the hurricane runs. Right here, the 12Z's definitely backed off a little bit compared to what we saw with the 6Z. I can go ahead and show you the 6Z a little bit previously. Yeah, the 6Z was showing hurricane strength for the majority of the models. The 12Z has backed off a little bit at this current point, but in my opinion, the conditions are still very favorable for tropical development and quick intensification, regardless of what the models are saying right here. You have very warm water, you have very low wind shear as well. You have a situation where you have plenty of moist air, and ultimately a lot of the models that are forecasting this still do forecast this system to be a very strong one as well, and likely the more dominant of the two, as what we've seen with the European, the GFS, the Canadian. A lot of them have shifted further to the west and made the Western Storm the more dominant one as well, and that would be very bad for U.S. impacts right there. And let's go ahead and show you these forecast models just to kind of exacerbate this whole situation. Let's go ahead and start with the European for you guys right here. Here is your European model. European definitely is pretty interesting. European actually at 0Z had Humberto quickly intensifying after about 2 days or so, but by the time it did and kind of stayed out in the Atlantic, 94L was getting its act together as it was approaching the Bahamas right here, and it put enough distance away for it to ultimately start to get its act together before this system, which is Humberto, starts moving to the west and potentially impacts it. But as you're seeing right here, is tropical storm strength is what we're seeing, and then we get up to hurricane strength before making landfall in North or South Carolina, according to the 0Z Euro. The Euro also wanted Humberto to really ramp up in intensity as well, really turn up as well, get up to the 930s millibar as well, but mainly stay out to sea due to a cold front in that region as well. So that's something you're going to want to pay attention to, but still, the Western Storm kind of pulls Humberto towards it as it makes landfall, and that is not a good scenario right there. And I personally think that some of these models are underestimating the intensity of what will be Imelda potentially a little bit. And the reason I think that is because the water temperatures are 30 degrees Celsius. You have wind shear at a jet angle that's going to enhance the outflow, and you have plenty of moist air, as well as good vorticity as well that just needs to center itself and consolidate. That's the only thing I would say that would kind of inhibit its intensity if the storm gets in its own way. But considering a lot of it is over the Dominican Republic, it won't cause that big of an issue. In fact, it might help it in this scenario at this current point, in my opinion, because it's not officially designated a tropical depression or anything like that. It doesn't have a closed low just yet. So that's what you have with the European. 12Z GFS is ringing in right now, and my goodness, this is not a good scenario either, and this has kind of exacerbated that westward shift. The GFS has the system really getting up to Category 2 intensity as it makes landfall near the Charleston area in South Carolina before moving inland and causing a lot of flash flooding and all of that. Hey, Greg, if you're in Georgia, you're definitely going to want to pay attention to this. I know the Chatham County Emergency Management is probably keeping an eye on this. You're definitely going to want to pay attention to this too, because this dramatic shift to the west we've seen. So I'm just looking out for you and my folks down in southeastern Georgia that are especially paying attention to this. I have some connections down there to watch out for as well. But ultimately, the GFS's scenario is not a very good one for impacts, and considering its westward shift and considering it's more in line with a lot of the consensus now, I'm more inclined to trust it, especially since it's within that 5-day time frame that we can really rely on the GFS. In terms of Humberto, the GFS continues to have its slowly strengthen, at least not get as high in intensity as what we were originally thinking because of its initial shear problems. But my goodness, we're looking at two powerful hurricanes potentially very close to each other. One of them making landfall, one of them just staying out to sea. That's something you do not see every day. Next thing we'll show you is the Canadian run. Canadian run has Invest 94L really organizing pretty quickly. The Canadian still favors a Fujiwara effect. I do find that kind of interesting, but they also want Humberto to really pick up in speed, especially after 3 days out, where the NHC is a little bit more hesitant and kind of more backing off on that and wanting a Fujiwara effect to kind of yank it out to sea at that point. I'm not 100% sure to see how realistic that is, and considering all the other models are screaming, hey, this is heading towards land, I'm a little inclined to say that this is likely an outlier, but it's still a very possible scenario if Humberto can move further to the west in time. And then lastly, we have the Icon run. Icon has been very aggressive with this scenario right here. Icon actually has this as a hurricane moving through the Bahamas, and then interestingly kind of stalling out right here and kind of really not doing that much. Yeah, I'm not really that inclined to trust the Icon at this current point, mainly because number one, it wants Humberto to move way further to the west than the European and the GFS, and two, both of these get really strong in intensity right here. These are two major hurricanes very close to each other. I don't know how much to trust it at this current point, mainly because of that fact. And very quickly, I do want to show some hurricane models as well. We'll show you the H-Wharf and a couple of the halves runs. Here's the H-Wharf for Invest 94L. System starts to consolidate as it moves through the Bahamas right here. Gets up to hurricane strength as it moves east of the region right there. Gets up to Category 2 intensity, and before making landfall just north of Cape Fear, I believe, towards near the Wilmington area as a Category 2 system. Let's go ahead and pull this up for you very quickly. Yeah, this is actually a Category 2, potentially even Category 3 strength as well at 6Z. That is going to shift a little bit further to the west right there because of the 12Z runs. We don't have those in just yet, but that's just kind of to show you what kind of conditions and what the hurricane runs are going for with this. Here is your Halves A model. Halves A has the system consolidating. Yeah, okay, the track's a little bit iffy right there, but it does get its act together and then kind of makes landfall as a strong tropical storm to weak hurricane in South Carolina. Definitely going to want to pay attention to that. The Halves B, though, definitely took the cake, especially for the 6Z right here, just really showing a lot was going on. Keep in mind, this is very hard for me to believe right here, especially considering the bad initialization with this, but okay, never mind. There was a run on the 6Z intensity that had it just blowing up to a Category 5. I'll have to look and see which one that was, but don't believe that at this current point. We'll have to pay attention to it. There's a lot of unknowns with this right now. The track is a very tricky forecast. The intensity is also a very tricky forecast as well, given what's going on with Humberto. But by and large, this is a scenario you are absolutely going to want to pay attention to, and there are likely impacts now, especially given this westward shift of the models. So we'll continue to keep you updated on that here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. And with that being said, we're closing the video out right here. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. If you'd like to help out, hang out, or ask us questions, join the Storms United Discord server. We are streaming tomorrow night. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.